Welcome back to Project Freelance. How's it going? I hope you're doing well. My name is Kay Anagonio, and I am a freelance videographer, musician, podcaster. I do a lot of things. And this week on the podcast, I'm speaking with David Dennis of Ventana Surfboards. He's a photographer. He works with Microsoft, and he gives back. That's his main thing, giving back to different charities, giving back to the ocean with his surfboards. He does a lot, and that's a man after my own heart. I love that this guy has a lot of creative itches that he likes to scratch. And we're going to be talking about how he manages his time. We're going to be talking about how he manages doing so many different things and what it's like to work with a company like Microsoft who gives back as well. So before we get into the episode, there are a few housekeeping things I want to let you guys know about. First of all, I have a book out, a photography book that makes for a great gift. I know the holidays just passed, but if you're still looking for that special gift for somebody or a gift for any time, check out my book, No Tracers, An Urban Explorer's Diary. It's full of photographs and stories from my abandoned building explorations. Yeah. When I am not freelancing, I explore abandoned places. It's my passion project. I love doing it. I'm actually working on my second book right now, and it's going to be all international places, and I'm super excited to create that and put it out for you guys. Secondly, if you like this show at any point in time, please hit the subscribe button. And if you want to see a visual form of this podcast, go to the Project Freelance YouTube channel. You can watch this episode. It's got photos along with it if you want to check that out. And lastly, I have to thank our partner, who is Liquid Death Water, who is another company that gives back to the environment. If you've never heard of Liquid Death Water, don't worry. I've got an ad coming for you in 3, 2, 1. From the streams of the Austrian Alps comes a new kind of water. A water that is sure to raise you from your grave. If you're tired of buying cases of plastic water bottles that contain carcinogens and God knows what else, or if you're trying to lower your waste footprint, Liquid Death comes in beautifully rugged aluminum cans. Murder your thirst with a can of Liquid Death. Check the link in the description and use code JustTheLetterK at checkout for 10% off your order. Liquid Death. Murder your thirst. So if you want to change the world and murder your thirst at the same time, definitely check out liquiddeath.com and use code JustTheLetterK at checkout for 10% off your order. That would be awesome. Thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate it. Liquid Death appreciates it, and the world appreciates it. They are giving back to the environment, and I love that they are the first partner that I've had on this podcast. So thank you, Liquid Death. I appreciate you guys so very much. All right, without further ado, David, please introduce yourself and what it is you do to the Project Freelance audience.
Cool. I'm David Dennis, co-founder of Ventana Surfboards and Supplies, and a program manager at Microsoft, and a photographer that raises money for charity through my portrait work.
Wow. Okay. So there's quite a bit that you do, which is awesome. It sounds very similar to my life. I do a couple different things. So what came first for you in this venturous world of yours?
Wow. What came first for me? I grew up in Silicon Valley. I've been working in tech for a really long time. I used to be a public school teacher, which I loved, but we couldn't make enough money to live the life we wanted to live in Santa Cruz. And my wife, she's a teacher, and took off some time, and I had to go and make real money. So I went into tech and wound up after a few years at Microsoft, been there for 20 years, but decided I wanted to scratch some other creative itches. And so about 6.5 years ago, I co-founded a surf company with a friend. And right around that time, started doing freelance photography work and raising money for nonprofits through my photo exhibits. So it all sort of ties into each other. But I guess the tech thing started when I needed to earn a little extra money to live the beach lifestyle in Santa Cruz.
Okay, so that was more or less your like full-time gig while you were trying to get these other ventures up and running, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I did a TEDx talk a while back called "Don't Quit Your Day Job," and it's really about you can do, I looked at all the stuff you're doing too, and I think it probably resonates with you. Like, you don't have to just do one thing, right? I mean, you can scratch all your creative itches and do the things you're passionate about. And sometimes you might work a corporate job on the side to, you know, to live the lifestyle and to fund what you want to do. I actually love what I do at Microsoft. But I hear people all the time talk about how, God, I really would love to have been an artist, or I wish I could have done that, or I wish I could travel more. And you can do all those things. You don't have to use the fact that you have a more traditional job as an excuse.
Yeah, I do feel like a lot of people do that, and a lot of people ultimately regret not scratching those creative itches, and it's almost detrimental to them. What could you say to people that work 40, 50 hours a week that are like, I don't know how to manage my time in order to do the creative things I love? Like, what would you say to them?
I mean, what I did was to be honest, I'm sure some of my colleagues at work will hear this, but I made a decision a number of years ago that I wasn't going to continue climbing the ladder. And so I decided that I love where I am. I'm in a great job. I'm now able to work remotely, even before COVID, and decided that I wasn't super tied up with this idea of, constantly getting promoted and having bigger teams and, having this exalted title, because I wanted to have more balance. So I personally made some trade-offs career-wise in order to have a life that was more compelling and meaningful to me.
I love that. And so why did you choose to go into the surfboard world? Like, I'm sure you were a surfer beforehand and then you kind of like dove into that. But I mean, a lot of surfers just surf. What made you want to create a surfboard company?
Actually, I didn't start till I'm older. I'm over 52, and I didn't start surfing until I was almost 40.
Wow.
And we had been living in Madrid, Spain. My family and I was working there for Microsoft, and we moved back to Santa Cruz and decided we were going to be here forever. And I figured I live in one of the best surf places in the world. I might as well learn to surf. So the family and I learned to surf together, and I just got super into it to the point where I had this idea for an eco surf company, met a partner through a photo exhibit that I did to raise money for the Surfrider Foundation. And just got so passionate about surfing that I decided I wanted to start a company, but also start one in such a way that it gave back to the ocean that I love so much. So it was really just, wanting to do more with this newfound hobby that I fell in love with.
That's awesome, man. I love that you what was missing in the surfboard world that you kind of filled?
Well, I mean, the problem with surf companies, I mean, like every company, I mean, especially in the apparel industry and surfboards and wetsuits and things like that, it's just horrible for the world. I mean, there's just the carbon footprint for apparel manufacture, I think, is second only to the oil industry in general. Surfboards are like disposable, basically. They're made out of foam. They break really easily. Wetsuits are petroleum based. I mean, it's just terrible. And so people that love the ocean, often surfers especially, their purchase choices don't reflect what they espouse their values to be, which is protecting the ocean and protecting the environment. And so I had this idea of starting a company that sort of changed that and led the industry in thinking about and demonstrating what was possible with eco-responsibility in the products that we make. My partner was building hollow wooden surfboards out of reclaimed wood. And so we joined forces. He makes the boards, and I built an apparel line and a bunch of ancillary products that the designs of which are inspired by the surfboards. But really, it just comes down to like the choices that we make don't always reflect the values that we espouse. And we wanted to do something different in the context of one small company.
Yeah, I remember hearing Joe Rogan talk about how we're all critics because we buy iPhones that are, made by little kids that are essentially slaves in other countries. And And so I'm going to pose this question to you. He asked his guest, would you pay more for a phone that is made in the USA that is not, built off the backs of slavery? So for you, are people open to paying more for something like a more expensive surfboard that is eco-friendly?
Yeah, we find they are. I mean, this is a big problem with environmental responsibility in general. Like, unfortunately, it's mostly accessible to people who have more money, right? And what we need to do and I think it's getting there, right? We're starting to be able to get to scale with products that are more responsible, that are more accessible to more people, which is ultimately what's needed to start to change the trajectory of this terrible path we're on. You start to see companies, even big companies like Walmart and Target, doing more for the environment and dealing with trying to get to carbon neutrality. And, some of it's greenwashing, where they try to tell a good story and ultimately they're still buying a bunch of stuff from China that's wrapped in plastic. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of the big conundrum. If only the wealthy can afford to be quote unquote responsible, like, where are we really?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, I love that you're doing something to give back to the environment, to help the environment. I grew up, my father works for an oil company. So, I'm very passionate about trying to do something that's the opposite to, help the planet, because I feel like, unfortunately what he does is something that has been done for so long that they're like set in their ways almost.
Yeah. I mean, I saw that you were over in the Middle East. I had a feeling that that's why you were there, but we do, all of us. I mean, the reality is that the problem with the planet is humans in general. Right. And so, we just all have to, do what we can do. But we do find, in fact, one of the reasons we started the company was because we did some research and found that people people of all sort of status levels are willing to pay more for something that's handcrafted, something that's locally made, something that is better for the environment, that's more socially responsible, more equitable for, from a racial justice perspective. And so, just because we're capitalist and making money doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be irresponsible, because customers expect us to act in ways that are more responsible.
Definitely. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your photography. When did you first pick up a camera?
Gosh, probably I don't know, 30 years ago, maybe. I mean, I lived in Costa Rica with my wife, who was then my girlfriend. God, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, a long time ago. And I think I brought a camera down there, and that's really where I sort of got into photography, maybe a little bit before that. But so I have zero attention span. And so when we've traveled, I'm always the one that's just kind of, we go into a museum and, my wife will read every single word on every single exhibit. And, 3 hours later, I've been outside for 2 hours and 50 minutes already. It's like I saw everything already. And so I'll always have a camera with me, and then I'll just start shooting, talking to people in the streets, taking portraits, moving from one thing to another really quickly, and just trying to keep my attention span with the camera. But I love taking pictures of people. And so I've taken pictures of, street portraits, basically, of people all over the world. But when we moved back to Santa Cruz, I decided that I wanted to try and do something that gave back with my photography, rather than just taking pictures for the sake of taking pictures. So I started doing these charity portrait exhibits, and I've done 7 of them to raise money for charities or nonprofits focused on ocean conservation, education, and homelessness. Wow. So what I do is I pick a charity, or they come to me. I take portraits for a period of months that are representative of what the charity does. So if it's a homeless services organization, I'll take pictures of people that are involved in the nonprofit, people who've been helped, people who are homeless in our community, and then put on a big show. I sell the pictures. I donate 100% of the money to the nonprofit. And then Microsoft has a giving program where they match 100% of everything we donate.
Wow.
and then give $25 an hour for every hour we volunteer. So the project, I track the hours, log those. Microsoft pays the charity for my time, and then I'm selling the portraits, and Microsoft's matching it. So each one of these things, it's basically just a huge party where I put up my photos and we have everybody come, and there's usually music, and when they raise $10,000 to $20,000 each.
Wow.
And so I've found that it's more meaningful for me to take pictures that are actually giving back rather than just taking a photo of somebody and posting it online somewhere.
And how did you first find out about these exhibits? Like, I didn't even know that, charity exhibits were a thing. I've done one art show in the past, and it was
Yeah.
before COVID, and I was supposed to do another one, but obviously that didn't happen because of COVID. But, like, how would somebody get involved with something like this?
I just there was one spark. There was a guy that I used to talk to and help out a little bit in downtown Santa Cruz named CJ, and he was homeless. He was a veteran, pretty severe PTSD and alcoholism, and he let me take some pictures of him one day. And I was just looking at it, going, God, how could these photos actually help more broadly? And I'm pretty outgoing, and I don't know, probably have a huge ego too. And so, like, I thought it'd be cool. Wow, what if I did a portrait exhibit and I could show off all my pictures? And then I kind of thought, well, that would be a great way to do that, scratch that itch, but also try to raise money and give back in what I'm now calling philanthropic photography. So, I mean, for you with your art, what you find is that you pick a nonprofit, whatever thing is you're passionate about, and that's actually a great way to amplify attendance. It's a way to do marketing. So I know that sounds crass, like, well, we're going to leverage this nonprofit to do marketing for my photo show. But, we're all working together collaboratively. So, you want people to come to your show. They want to raise money. You give back a large percentage of your profits on sales to the nonprofit, and everybody wins. And so every single thing that I'm involved in, for the most part, I try to find a way to give back, even if I'm doing it anonymously, just because it's the right thing to do and it feels good.
Absolutely. And I think it's cool that, Microsoft does that point matching program. I think that that's something that more companies and more businesses should do when it comes to giving back. I think that's absolutely incredible that they do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we with Ventana, the surf company, we have a huge giving component where we give back a ton of money to ocean conservation. And I was sort of spurred on by Microsoft. So, I mean, we look at these big corporations and we go, corporations are the problem, but there's a lot of good that they're doing too. It's a much more nuanced conversation than just, these big behemoth companies are killing the world. But, obviously I work there. And so I'm sort of motivated to, believe that we're doing the right thing. But in reality, there's a lot of good that some of these larger companies are doing.
That's awesome.
We actually have implemented a program where we're working on in the next few years becoming carbon negative.
Wow.
Actually investing in things, reforestation and things like that pull more carbon from the atmosphere than we've actually put into it.
Wow.
So some of these larger organizations are going to have to be the ones that have massive scaled investments that reverse the trend. Don't just try and keep us treading water.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great that they're trying to do that. And I think that they will help lead the way for other big companies to do stuff like that. And I love that it's, Microsoft is such a huge company, they've been around for quite a while, and I don't think they're going anywhere. So I think it's cool that they're trying to, make a difference in the world. I think that's super important.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the other big one for us is, social justice, racial equity, gender equity. I mean, the amount of training that I've done and the speakers that we've had and the discussions and the work that we're doing on diversity, equity, inclusion. I mean, I don't think from the outside somebody would think, wow, a big corporation is actually going to teach their people about those topics and what they can do about them, and allyship. And, a lot of what I've, learned over the last few years has come from within the company, and that I've been able to have conversations with others and friends and relatives and our kids about a lot of those topics that I don't know. I maybe wouldn't have been as proactive as I like to think I would have been had it not been for, all the work that we're doing internally on that.
Yeah, definitely. And then what challenges have you faced as far as, surfboard company goes, as far as photography goes? What are some of the challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
Um, part of it is just juggling all the things, and you're probably in the same position because you got so much cool stuff going on. I mean, just trying to juggle them all, and there are times when there's some big project I've got to work on with the photo exhibit, but I also have a really important meeting at work, and I got a phone call from somebody that wants to buy a really expensive surfboard, and just trying to juggle all those things. But I don't think I'd have it any other way. I don't think you would either. Like, anytime I'm just sitting with nothing to do, like, I just start to go out of my head. So
Yeah.
I think for me, it's just trying to juggle all the things. And now obviously COVID, has put a damper on all the photography exhibit work.
Right.
But I think that's it. I think it's just trying to prioritize.
Yeah, I think I can definitely relate to when you're sitting around doing nothing, you feel antsy and you kind of lose it.
Yeah.
I definitely feel a little bit of guilt when I'm not working as well. I don't know if you've ever experienced something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just feel like, and I don't know what it is, like fear of death or I don't know
Something.
what
Yeah,
it is,
yeah. A
but
fear of losing time almost.
yeah, exactly. It's like, if you're not productive, you just feel like you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And productive broadly defined, like creating art is
Right.
productive.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Exactly. And so as a photographer, are you completely self-taught or do you have any like education background as like in photography?
I think I took a class
Mm.
once, but it's all self-taught. I mean, you can learn so much online and through
Yeah.
videos and just through going out and actually shooting. It's interesting now, we talked about, iPhones earlier, but I'm finding that my iPhone takes better pictures now than my DSLR in a lot of
It's
situations.
crazy.
And also, everybody can be a pretty good photographer now. So, I'm trying to figure out ways to differentiate what I do relative to the masses, and that's becoming harder and harder. So I'd say I'm probably less motivated on the photography side of late.
Mm.
But you're probably the same too with your art and your music and everything else. Like, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes you get really into one thing and then you kind of decide you're going to go work on this other thing for a while. And when you have a lot of things to work on, a lot of passions and a lot of skills, it's cool because you can always find something interesting to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely jump from thing to thing, but it's all in the same kind of creative realm, like I'll work on a music album and then I'll do photography and then, I do videography full time. That's my full time gig as
Yeah,
a
I saw that.
freelancer. And I mean, like I wouldn't have it any other way. I love being able to do multiple things in a day and I love doing something different every day. Like I tried doing the 9 to 5 type of video jobs, like working in a studio. I've tried editing for people like for, weeks and months at a
Yeah.
time. And I have to be doing something different every single day. Otherwise I lose my mind.
Yeah, I did when I did a talk to a girls' school in San Francisco and the theme of it was, we have this problem where we tell kids when they're young, what do you want to be when you
Hmm.
grow up? Or we ask them that, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like this idea that you should just be one thing and that's what you need to be dedicated to from the time you're young until the time you die. What do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like the right question is like, what are all the things you want to be? What are all the things you want to do? And who do you want to help? And so, I mean, I mean, just researching you, I'm like blown away by all the stuff that you do. And that's great because you find happiness through, doing all the things that you're passionate about and finding your own path as opposed to just pigeonholing yourself from the time you're young. And if you don't achieve the thing that you thought you were going to do when you were 8 years old, that you're somehow a failure. Like,
Yeah.
it's just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I kind of played the game, if you will, like the game of life. My dad, when I was graduating high school, he was like, okay, before you do what you want to do, you have to get a degree. It doesn't matter what the
Right.
degree's in, you just have to get one. And I was like, well, I want to do film, so can I just get a film degree? I mean, like, I don't want to go take math and science. I just want to make videos and make movies and stuff. And, he was like, well, that's a degree, so go for it, So I
Right.
got my bachelor's in film production and then just jumped into the deep end and started making movies and music videos and live concert photography, touring with bands, the whole shebang. So
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I mean, my kids are both at UC Santa Barbara, and one's about to graduate, one's got another year and a half or so, and it's the same. I mean, we always say C's get degrees, and we don't just pick something and just stick to it. So at least you can show you can finish
yeah,
something. But I hope they go, and my son's working on acting and modeling in LA right now, and whatever he decides to go do, and whatever my daughter does, I don't care. As long as they're scratching a bunch of passionate itches as well, like I
I
have.
love that. I love that. And are you guys still avid travelers? Like you sounds like you were back in the day. You guys were in Costa Rica. You were in Madrid, which is beautiful. I love Madrid. It's such an amazing
Yeah.
place. So are you guys still like traveling like crazy and stuff? Or are you kind of more settled down?
No, I mean, as far as obviously, like all of us, COVID's kind of put a damper on the larger
Right.
travel. But I mean, we decided early on when the kids were 4 and 6, I think, that we were just going to keep doing crazy world traveling like we used to when we were younger. And we weren't going to. So many people just, they sock away money and they say, when I'm retired, I'm going to travel. And we just said, screw that. We're gonna start, even if we're, blowing half the kids' retire or, inheritance or whatever, or college fund, we're going to just do crazy trips all over the place because we think that's a better way to expose our kids to what's going on in the world, and have fun as a family. So yeah, we've done a lot of travel around the world. And obviously when we were in Madrid, it was easy to jump off to, places around Europe and Africa.
Yeah.
And then I've traveled a lot for work. But yeah, I mean, that's for us, that was the cool thing to do with the family was travel and live abroad. And I think, I'd still love to do that again as soon as COVID's subsided.
Yeah, definitely. And as a someone whose dad, traveled a lot for work, like I can probably speak for your kids as well. Like I'm super grateful for those opportunities, like I got to go to rural Thailand, I got to go to Cambodia, I
Yeah.
got to go to Ireland, and like I lived in Australia for a year, so it's like very, very grateful looking back and being able to do that. And now my dad still lives in the Middle East. And now whenever I go visit him, we meet somewhere else, so we will meet in Portugal or we'll meet in,
Yeah.
the UK, and next year my band's going to go on tour. And I was like, hey, we're going to be playing in Belgium. You should come meet us and just come see the show, so it's just a really cool way to just grow as a person, and learn about other cultures and learn about how other people live, So I'm super grateful for that kind of stuff, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, bluntly, we're pretty privileged. And so we wanted the kids to, see early on that like we're a total anomaly in the world.
Yeah.
And so, we did a lot, we did volunteer work in rural Guatemala. And, we didn't want the kids to get complacent and, um, you know, feel like what we're privileged to have is the norm,
Mm.
and to have some empathy for what goes on and to help others. And, yeah. And then the cultural side of it. I mean, I see in your music and your art and just your whole vibe, like you clearly, didn't grow up in some suburb in LA and that was your
True.
world. And so your work is richer as a result of, your global perspective.
Definitely, definitely. And yeah, I definitely put a lot of the world into my photography and into my music, especially. I love,
Yeah.
taking influences from other cultures and adding that into like sprinkling it onto my creative side. I think it's just
Yeah.
something that's super cool that I get to do, like you said, it is a privilege, but super grateful for it. So my last question for you is, what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
I think it's what we talked about earlier, like this idea that you really can carve out time if you do it intelligently to do a lot of the things that you're passionate about. So I think that's one thing. And then as a part of that, I think I wish I had figured out how to leverage what I'm good at or interested in to give back more when I was
Mm.
younger. I mean, that's the whole surf company came out of a charity photo exhibit. that I did for the Surfrider Foundation Santa Cruz
Mm-hmm.
chapter. And so giving back to others pays you back as well. But even without that, it's just, we complain about all these social problems, but then very few of us try to do anything about it. And I could be doing 100 times more than I am, but I wish I had figured that out younger, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely inspired me to try to get involved with more photography as far as like working with charities goes. I think that that's something that I personally have taken away from this episode and something that I definitely want to do going forward. So, I mean, thank you for coming on the show. And if people want to follow you, follow your journey, or if they want to pick up a surfboard, how can they do that?
Ventana Surfboards on Instagram and every other social media, ventanasurfboards.com. And then daviddennisphotos.com is probably the other good one to check out.
All right, guys, that was my podcast with David Dennis of Ventana Surfboards. If you want to check out what they're doing, they are giving back to the environment, which I think is super important. You can go to ventanasurfboards.com. I've put links down in the description. They have everything from surf wax to apparel to some $10,000 surfboards. So if you're interested, definitely go check out these one-of-a-kind pieces. And if you want to follow David on his social media, David Dennis Photo, his links are down in the description. Thank you, David, for coming on the podcast. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and leave a rating and feedback. That helps the podcast grow. It helps other people find us. And if you would like to come on the show, please hit me up at Project Freelance on Instagram or Twitter, and we'll set up a time for you to come on Project Freelance and share your story and share your tips and tricks for freelancing with others. I really love this podcast, you guys. It's one of my favorite things that I get to do. It's very educational. And like I said in this episode, like I've taken a lot away from David and what he's been doing as a photographer. And I definitely want to follow in those footsteps. I think it's super important to give back. And so I think I'm going to start doing that more through my photography. So if you guys are interested in following my journey as a photographer, you can go to justtheletterk.com, or you can go to notracers.com if you like to see abandoned places being photographed. That's where I do that. Super cool. All right, guys. Thank you for listening to another episode of Project Freelance. Come back next Monday at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, or whenever you want to listen to the show. It doesn't have to be exactly when it comes out. But thank you for listening regardless. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out, and go create something.